give her a crank. We tried to start those, nothing's happening. All right, day 2 with the little bro. We're about to pull the boat out and start working on that engine. I have gaskets for the engine on the way, so we're cleaning the boat, prepping for that new engine. Cleaned the positive and negative cables, as well as the bucket that the battery and the battery tray sit in, and we cleaned the oil tank, which has lines running down and into the engine compartment. Our problem is this oil tank is leaking. It's already low on oil again. It is leaking out the lines and pooling in the engine bay. As you can see, we already cleaned out this side, and guess how much oil we got out of that one side? A very full 6 quarts. That was all sitting at the bottom of where that engine was. And the worst part is that other side is completely full. You can't even see the divider in the middle. Here's the interesting thing. There's a drain plug right there, and they have it on both sides. So I don't know if I do the drain plug on the other side, will all that oil come out right here where the main plug is, or is there another one farther up underneath? Because I don't see anything. So we're gonna give that a shot, because that's easily 8 or 9 quarts of oil. But I'm gonna wait on the little bro to help me with that before I make a huge mess. And we are gonna move over to something a little bit easier. In the mechanics report the previous owner got before he sold the boat, it says that the dash has inoperative gauges. Dash replacement or complete disassembly and cleaning of all connections is needed. We are mechanic. We already popped off this little cover. It's got a key on the top, comes right up, and we're gonna take these bolts out and get to the connections for these tachometers and sort this out. Here are all the connections for the speedometer, tachometer, fuel gauge, and all the buttons including horn, lights, bilge pump, you name it. They're all underneath this dash compartment, which we just took out with some screws. The purple wire is power, gray is signal, and black is ground on these tachometers. Whenever you turn the wheel, this moves the mechanism behind the dash, which then turns the jet drives in the rear left or to the right. Definitely a complex design. We got the speedometer out, took off all 6 nuts. Now we got to figure out how to fix this thing. Well, we may have just found our issue. We just took out the Yamaha Exciter tachometer. This would be for the right side engine, I believe. First of all, this bolt is loose, not even tight in there. All of these other connections are all corroded. Now it is in this orientation when it sits in the dash. And on the back of this, you see you've got battery, ground, and SIG. Also, all these parts are literally older than I am, which is crazy. Now these are the connections that was on that. Now this purple wire wasn't even tightened on there, and the nut had fallen off, so it was legit just hanging off, which is probably why this tachometer is not working. Most likely all the corrosion in here is this core seal is doing nothing to keep any water or spray out from in here. You've got the horn right in that corner. You've got the steering column in the middle. Whenever you turn the steering left or right, these rods go up and down, turning you obviously left or right. You have the whole bulkhead harness going to all the switches and the other tachometer right there, and then the speedometer in the middle. These are all the connections I had to take off to get the tachometer out of there. But we're gonna clean all this up, get some dielectric grease on these, make sure they don't corrode anymore, and slap it back in place. Well, it is the next day on the Yamaha jet boat. We cleaned out the whole engine bay, both sides, even cleaned up the engine on the left side. It looks fantastic. Unfortunately, right now, we are still waiting on our gaskets for the engine. But yesterday, we also tried to address our tachometers not working according to the mechanics. So we cleaned all the connections up on those, put those back into place, and we have yet to see if that works. But now we are addressing the main issue on why these engines fail so often. The way the cylinders get lubricated on this GP1200 engine is oil injection lines, which run directly to the airbox and down into the carburetor through those tiny holes on each one of these cylinders. It mixes with the fuel and that lubricates the cylinder. Now what happened on our engine, these lines popped off because they are pretty flimsy and they were just held on by zip ties. Well, that meant that our engine wasn't getting any lubrication. So you can see that cylinder, which is the middle cylinder, is all scored up because of the heat, because of no lubrication. And you can see it was already starting to happen on the first cylinder and the third as well. So because of that, it completely ruined our motor. So now we get to redo these lines with better lines and better clamps and try to find some line that is the right inner diameter for the oil nipples on the backside of the airbox and where they connect to this oil pump on the side of the engine. Now this thing runs off the crankshaft, so it spins once the engine is running. Oil comes in through the bottom here and it pumps oil up through these lines into the carburetors. Now the cool thing, the way this pump works is it actually has two different speeds. It has an idling speed and then it has a full throttle speed. So this cable is directly connected to the throttle bodies up here. And when you activate the throttle on the boat, it turns this, which in turn pulls this cable, opens up this oil pump on the bottom, allowing more oil to flow into the cylinder. So at higher RPMs, you're getting more oil into the cylinder, and at lower RPMs, the oil pump closes more, so you're having less oil into the carburetor and the fuel and then into the cylinder. This oil injection system is definitely an interesting design. I've never seen this before on an engine. And you guys got to remember, this is 1999 technology right here. This is what they were using back in the day with these two strokes. And it is also the #1 failing point for these GP1200 engines. This is the backside of the airbox where the oil injection lines connect. And they don't give you a lot of room, but we're definitely going to give this a shot. And if we need to run to the store to grab some lines for this engine oil injection system, we'll do so as well. The main issue on why these engines fail so often. It is also the #1 failing point for these GP1200 engines. Here is a perfect example. This is the left side engine in the twin engine compartment back here on this Exciter 270. As you can see, the oil lines are coming from the side of the airbox. They route down and look at that. There's already one popped off. Just chilling. So now one of these cylinders is not getting any oil into the carburetor and mixing with the fuel to lubricate the cylinder. Now that one cylinder is getting no lubrication because that oil line has popped off. And this is a common issue on these boats. We have our first set of oil injection lines installed onto the engine. We ran them with a zip tie on all the ports on the airbox down to the oil pump, and they are a snug fit. These are inner diameter 1/8 inch and outer diameter 1/4 inch. So the OEM clip works just like factory. Little bro helped me simply measure off of the existing lines, and we got lines that work just perfect. You guys also saw while we were doing that, our gaskets showed up in the mail. Super excited to throw these on. We have plenty more of this high pressure oil injection lines for the rest of the engine bay and the other engine. But now we get to do the fun stuff. Our gaskets have arrived, so we're going to tear down the carburetors off of this old motor and start building up the new motor. Now for the fun part I've been waiting for. We get to finally disassemble the engine, taking off the carburetors, the starter, the front stator, the oil injection pump, all of these unique items to this two-stroke. First off was the oil pump, which was just on 2 bolts. It has a keyway that runs off the crankshaft, so when the crankshaft spins, it also spins the oil pump. Now getting all those bolts for the carburetor and prying the carburetor off that old seal. This motor has probably never had the carbs rebuilt on it. The stator wires run behind the carburetors, and the carburetors have vacuum lines connected to each carburetor that had to be disconnected first, and then I could pull off the whole carburetor assembly, which is on one base plate. There's intake runners that are mounted directly on the side of the engine that have reeds bolted to them. Not sure what the reeds are for, but they definitely look pretty cool. Now you can get a great shot of inside the engine, seeing the connecting rods and how they're actually on a bearing and not your traditional oil-filled engine. There's also a push drive hub on the front crankshaft which connects directly to the jet drive, basically something like a motorcycle would have on the rear sprocket. Now taking off the front alternator cover is coming off, so we can remove the front gear, which is for the starter. The crankshaft gear is held on with a keyway and is pressed on. So you have to turn 3 bolts in that gear to pull it off of the crankshaft. Then removing this other gear that connects the starter to that main crankshaft. Once those 2 things are out and they just slide right off, we can move over to the starter, which is on 2 bolts, and you just pull it right out. There's a seal on the front, helping to prevent water getting into the stator area. Well, here we have our old motor. It is all stripped down. The frame mounts off the bottom I took out to swap over to the other one because all 4 bushings are still good and this is in good condition. And I don't know if there's any size difference between the jet ski and the Exciter frame mounting. Now we took off a set of gears that slides into the case down here. I'm not sure what this is called, but starter spins this outer gear and the inside gear spins on the crankshaft to start the engine up. We slid this magnetic ring and the starter gear off of the crankshaft, and it has a keyway. This tiny little keyway slots directly into the crankshaft on the bottom here, which is kind of cool. Reminds me of a harmonic balancer that either slots in or has a keyway on the crankshaft. Now this is the exhaust side, but on the bottom is the intake. We took off our carburetors along with this other intake plate that I'm not sure what it's called, but it also has a gasket on both sides and it has these like reed valves on them. Apparently these are reed valves. No idea how they work, but it looks like there's a plastic film that comes up and sits back down. My best guess is pressure coming in the intake lifts these valves up and it goes through these reeds into the combustion chamber. Now I've never dealt with a 2-stroke before, so the way the intake and the exhaust exit and enter the engine is very interesting to me. The intake enters down here almost on the bottom half of the case, and then the exhaust is on a completely different side of the case on top where the top of the piston is. And it's almost like the air and oil mixture that comes in lubricates the crankshaft as well. We also removed the starter, which just simply slides out and bolts directly to the side. Now, if you guys remember on my MV Agusta, I took the 2 bolts out of this starter and tried to hammer this piece out, and I actually cracked it down here. So I learned my lesson, kept these bolts in this time, and just took it out as one assembly, and it came out perfectly fine, which is how they're supposed to be taken out. Now, as you can see in there, outer pieces, and they are oily. Now, I don't understand how those get oil, because there's no oil going through the crankshaft on this side or this side, so it has to be the fuel oil mixture that comes in the intakes that lubricates the crankshaft itself. Another interesting thing, man, there are so many things on this 2-stroke. Now, the crankshaft and the conrod are connected with a roller bearing. That is not what we have usually seen on our engines. So really, that needs very minimal oil inside of the bottom of the connecting rod. One thing I just do not get with these 2-strokes is how is everything getting enough lubrication? With the way the oil is injected into the carburetor, I just don't see how this stuff runs efficiently. Unless you have to rebuild these motors like every 100 hours or something like that, which would just kind of be crazy. All right, enough chit chat. We're gonna take the tape off the intake and exhaust on this engine, which we have verified is good. We're gonna clean all the mating surfaces and start building it back up, including popping off these frame mounts, these rubber bushings, and swapping them with our old frame mounts and these bushings. After we taped up the exhaust and intake side on the old engine, I took off the old frame mounts on the used engine we picked up and swapped over the new frame mounts. Now, you can't see this on the video, but I added anti-seize on all of the bolts since they sit at the very bottom of the engine and they most likely will have water on them. Just a simple maintenance thing that really no one sees on camera. Then we moved to the alternator side, got to clean up all the gasket mating areas along with the crankshaft since this used engine had been sitting for quite some time. Also applied anti-seize onto the crankshaft and then got ready to throw on that small gear that is spun by the starter. Then cleaning up this starter that's from 1999 and installing that on the used engine. Slips right into place, and 2 12mm bolts bolt directly to the engine. No special installation needed. The way this thing works is pretty fascinating. I don't understand it. Somehow, when power is engaged to the starter, it pushes the middle gear forward, and then it also spins that other gear that's inside of the crankshaft, extrudes it out, touching the crankshaft gear, which then turns over the crankshaft. Or that's my best guess. Well, with the frame mounts on, the starter bolted down, whatever this contraption is, this is pretty cool. This thing is in place. We have the front side of the engine all cleaned up, ready for a fresh gasket. Let's open this up. catch how that crank bolt looked that we just tightened down the flywheel with? It had a big groove in the backside of the bolt, and that's exactly what the oil pump slots into. So when the crankshaft spins, that bolt spins as well, and that's what drives the oil pump. And because the oil pump is in that groove on the bolt, it drives the oil pump as the crankshaft spins. Wire wheel brushes are clutch, especially for such an old motor and when all of the mating surfaces are nice and crusty. This wire wheel does a great job cleaning off all of the dirt and debris on the mating surfaces of the exhaust and intake side, while also not taking off any of the metal material, especially since this brush I'm using has been used for many years, so it is pretty dull, but it does just enough to take off that dirt and grime and debris that is stuck on there and can't be removed with just a shop rag. Now we get to also take apart the intake runners and these reeds. I still don't really know what these reeds do. I'm not sure what the exact purpose of them is for, but I read somewhere online that if you shine these up to a light and you can't see any light through them, they are in good condition because you don't want any holes or cracks in those plastic reeds. And they look pretty darn good for being 26 years old. Well, we just got the carburetor plate on, all torqued down, nice and clean. Next will be our carburetors. This used engine is pretty filthy, but it's coming together nicely. I can't wait to get this thing back inside the boat and, you know, fire it right up. But we are gonna catch you guys tomorrow because it is already pretty late outside, so we'll see you in the morning.